This is episode number 41 of the Play Your Position podcast.
Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count. Here's your host, Mary Lou Kaser. Let's get started.
Kickoff, move the chains, and touchdowns. Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, where we take amazing conversations straight into the end zone. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaser, and this is the podcast that features conversations with and about people who show up and play full out each and every day. They are the people you admire: entrepreneurs, writers, artists, musicians, parents, teachers, athletes, adventurers, and their stories give us a glimpse into what it means to be human. My goal for each episode is to introduce you to fascinating new people, new ideas, and inspire you to keep playing full out in your life's work in order to make a difference. As always, details about each episode can be found over on the show notes page at my website, playyourpositionpodcast.com. Hello, everyone. We have got a great show in store for you today because of my guest, Andrea Lake. Andrea, are you ready for kickoff?
I am so excited.
Fantastic. Andrea Lake, founder and CEO of Lessons.biz and co-founder of Mentor Mojo. Both are e-learning platforms to help hyper-accelerate entrepreneurs on their journey to success. She has founded 14 companies since she was 18 years old, including StickerJunkie.com and Yoga Junkie, as well as Delinquent Distribution, which owned the merchandise sales rights on massive brands including Minecraft, World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Walking Dead, and The Hobbit. She has recently lectured at Harvard and is passionate about teaching business to the next generation of entrepreneurs. Andrea, again, I'm so excited to have you share your story with listeners today. And let's just jump right in because they now know what position you play. You are a serial entrepreneur, CEO and founder of many amazing projects. So it's game day and you are suited up. Could you please describe for listeners a typical day for you in your current position?
So I have an overarching team that tucks in and out with me of all of my different companies. So on a typical day, I would meet with my top tier team and then, answer emails and do all sorts of basic stuff after that. And then we create in our morning meeting just like a hit list of the most important stuff that needs to be executed on in whichever company. And then I just hit the grind. So that's pretty much my typical day. There's a lot of phone calls, a lot of strategic partnership work that I do. That's mostly what I do within my companies. And then execution on curriculum for Lessons.biz and Mentor Mojo. That would be a pretty typical day.
Great. And when did you recognize that you would play the position of entrepreneur? How did that come about for you?
Well, the funny thing is I did start my first company when I was 18, but I never even thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I just thought, wow, it's really lucky that I knew how to do this thing because I made these toys called rhythm sticks. They're the toys where you hold one in each hand and use the one that you're holding to throw a third one around. So it wasn't until about 3 years into that company, which was doing great for like an 18-year-old. I probably was clearing $40,000 a year in profit, which was like a ton of money for me back then.
Definitely.
And yeah, it's a lot of money now. I mean, it's a good chunk of money. But I just thought, I think I know how to run a business now after 3 years of doing it. But it never even, it happened so organically and casually that it wasn't until I was about 21 that I thought, I know how to run a business. I think I'm going to go into clothing and start a clothing company. And that's the first company that I did that got really big, was in clothing when I was about 22.
And tell us more about that clothing company, because people who are listening today are probably familiar with some of those names, the brands. I mean, I know I am. My son was a huge Minecraft player when he was in middle school, which is the typical age I've come to learn around that, and continues to be a game connoisseur. So how did you fall into that?
So I started when I was 22, a clothing company called Anti-Establishment Clothing. And there was no competition back then. We were one of the first t-shirt sites on the internet. It was before the internet was really used for commerce. And then we started selling a lot of stuff to the different chain stores like Hot Topic and Hastings and all these smaller chains. And I figured out how to get licensing rights on things when they were nothing, when they weren't worth anything, and you didn't have to put down big guarantees. And so I started snatching up the licensing rights on all these other small brands and small clothing companies, one of which became the biggest distributor of video game merchandise in the world. But at the time that I started working with them, we were both like teeny tiny companies. So I really just fell into it. And then they started acquiring licensing rights on World of Warcraft and all of Blizzard Gaming and Minecraft and these big brands. So I switched my focus and became a sales distribution company and started doing distribution for those brands. And what I love about entrepreneurship is when you're just starting out, you're making all of these friendships with other entrepreneurs that are just starting out, and then you all rise together. And that's exactly what happens, where we all just started, our company started getting bigger and bigger and bigger together over the course of our careers.
Wow. That's such an amazing opportunity that you were able to see and be in the right place at the right time. Although there is conflicting thoughts around right place, right time, and luck that
yes.
Really, we are always presented with amazing opportunities, and it's really about recognizing that the opportunity is there and then acting on it, which is what you did.
Yes. And so it's funny because now, of course, I talk a lot about those brands like Minecraft and the World of Warcraft. But to be clear, I had the rights on lots of different companies. And so it really is luck meets preparation because that's the one that rose to the top. But I had the rights on like 20 different companies, 18 of which sort of faded away. And then the video games sort of came to the top. So it really was just throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and seeing what would stick, because 15 years ago, nobody could have predicted, video game total sales is twice the entire movie industry. The video game industry is in dollars worldwide, but nobody would have realized that, in 2000.
That's amazing. I did not know that figure. Yeah. But I have a son who is an avid gamer. He can be on that computer or his iPhone playing something. He's had some merchandise over the years. Not so much now. He's kind of in that phase of being, I'm a 16-year-old and
right.
developing his own style. But that's fantastic. Well, along this journey, Andrea, you have obviously needed to have some guidance and help. So who has been an instrumental coach or mentor for you and influenced you to play your position as a businesswoman as you've evolved over the years?
Well, I got higher and higher levels of mentors as I was going. So when I started my first clothing company, I was making $0. And so I found someone that was making $10,000 a month in profit. And I thought, that is all the money in the world. I want to do what you have done. And so he started mentoring me. And then from there, I found a mentor who was doing about $4 million a year in sales, who is now my business partner that started Tap Out, which of course ended up doing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year in sales. And then once I was doing really quite well, I got another mentor when I was 27 who I never mentioned by name. He's a very reclusive private guy, but he's had billion-dollar exits on multiple different verticals. And so he could sort of advise me at any level of business that I was at. So a lot of people, when they're looking to get a mentor, they want Richard Branson or Mark Cuban to mentor them or someone. And that it would really be an inappropriate fit. With the best, most highly valuable thing is somebody that has done exactly what you want to do and is like 2 or 3 rungs higher level in success than you are. Because A, that person will be super flattered. They'll be way more willing to give you their time. They'll have more time to give. And then, of course, they can help you to reach exactly where you want to go.
That is fantastic advice. You're the first person on the show that over the last year and a half that has actually described what you want to look for when you go out and find a mentor. I'm wondering, could you discuss a little bit in more detail about obviously you're a woman, and does it really matter in terms of gender? I know as the higher we go in corporate America, the fewer women there are in those roles that maybe a young woman who's looking to either advance her career, because some listeners are in a corporate track, and others are like us, we're more entrepreneurial. So did you go out and find him? Did he somehow find you? Was it a mutual connection? Talk about that process.
Well, so in general, I have found my mentors very deliberately, and it doesn't matter to me if they're male or female. I realize it is different in corporate America, but in entrepreneurship, I have found being a woman to be absolutely nothing but an advantage. It's so advantageous because you're doing business with men, so it's far more cooperative than it is competitive as a woman in business. With that particular mentor, we met through a super random way. Actually, my ex-boyfriend had wanted him to mentor him, and I ended up reaching out to him on behalf of my ex-boyfriend because he was not getting a response from him, and he ended up looking me up at 27 and said, "You are just extraordinary. I want to mentor you." And then he gave me a list of 14 books to read in the next 6 weeks, and I read them in 4 weeks and got back to him, and he ended up mentoring me ever since. So that was like a little bit more of a random situation, but in general, you can be really deliberate with people and say, "I'm just so impressed by what you've done, and I really would just love to buy you coffee." And it could be a little bit daunting if you start out saying, "I want you to mentor me." Like that could feel like too much of a time commitment, but just invite them to have a cup of coffee or breakfast and buy it for them, and then start engaging them in the conversation. And then if you feel like it's a really good fit, you can ask them to be a bit more formal in the mentoring.
Doesn't have to be this giant bite the first time out of the gate, that a more just a casual approach. I mean, people are people, whether you're making billions of dollars a year or you're making no dollars a year, we're still human beings at the end of the day. And I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Can you remember just maybe a couple of the books that were on that list that listeners might go grab?
Yes, I do. Atlas Shrugged was one of the most impactful ones to me. Guns, Germs, and Steel, Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. A lot of them were like very overarching books on life stuff like that. Actually, he just sent me a new book list because I'm creating my summer reading list right now. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee was on his new list, which is not a business book, but just to get more in touch with the empathetic side of people. Also, a couple of books that were really outdated were on that list too, but those other three were really, really still current and really highly valuable.
So listeners, I will make sure that I mention these specific books that Andrea read on the show notes page that will be put up for her, which is playyourpositionpodcast.com/Andrea. So you're going to definitely want to check those out. And Andrea, let's get into the heart of the game where things get a little bit messy. I call this section of the show Move the Chains because anybody who's a football fan knows that once that initial whistle blows and the game starts, anything can happen, no matter how great the game plan is on paper and the coach and the players think we got this figured out. The fact of the matter is I've been in the stands enough times as a fan to know it doesn't work that way. So could you tell us about a time when you have found yourself either playing out of position or when things didn't go according to your game plan? Maybe you got sacked, intercepted, you fumbled the ball. Tell us that story and how you managed to get out of the craziness.
Well, isn't that the truth, what you're talking about? It does not always work out the way that we plan. I actually have a story that's kind of a well-known story of my life that I think it's important to tell because I think that a lot of times we compare our behind the scenes to other people's highlight reels. And then it separates us from them. And I just never want to be that person where when you look at me, you just see success, because that is not how my entrepreneurial has been. I've gone to zero twice. And the second time was really tough. I went $1.2 million in debt. I did not file for bankruptcy. I ended up paying it off, but it was really, really hard. I went on Oprah. I personally financed the entire company. I didn't get any venture-backed funding for it. And so it was a bit early. It was in 2006. It was a technology company that did subscription-based websites for best-selling spiritual authors like Gary Zukov and Don Miguel Ruiz and these amazing authors who have just completely changed my life. And the content was great and the websites were great, but the technology just simply was too early. Like we would be selling a program where you could get like all of these videos and phone call-in content and stuff and do teleclasses once a month. And it was just super awesome. Except for that, I was testing on T1 lines. And so then somebody in Kansas would buy this product and be downloading it on like a tin can and wire dial-up connection. And so it was just a customer service nightmare where a lot of the functionality wasn't working properly with the really super slow connections that people were on. So it was a frustrating experience for for the end user, which we didn't anticipate. And it just completely wiped me out, the company, because we were expecting like at least $1 million in sales on that first day. And that just simply did not happen. We got 70 sales, 70. It's not even one sale for every country that the show airs in. And then simultaneously that same week, a couple of other things happened with a couple of my other companies. I put together a $2 million deal with GameStop, and almost all the merchandise got returned back to us. And that was the same week. So,
wow. Why?
Just for a number of reasons. The recession hit retail way before it hit the general public, like almost 2 years before. And so as a result, all of a sudden, I went from really, really a very lavish lifestyle to and very expensive, high cost running my businesses themselves to not having two nickels to rub together. And so it can just be so tempting in that moment just to feel like a failure and to shut down and to not ever get back up. And I think that the only thing that separates people who win from people who, feel like a failure are that you just keep getting back up. It's not that you don't get knocked down. And actually what pulled me, because I was in a funk, a bad one for like 4 months. And I saw this video that Simon Cowell had done. I think it was actually on Oprah, where he talked about how when he was 33, he had to go and live back with his parents because he'd had such a massive failure. And I thought, oh, this just happens to everybody. And so I think it's important for like up and coming entrepreneurs when they see somebody super successful. Almost every entrepreneur that I know, and I know all of the big players, have been almost to zero, at zero, or below zero. It just happens, and it's not really that big of a deal. And you really can just get back up from it. And a lot of them, their first companies did not do that well. If you're in that position where you're struggling, just try not to take it too seriously and just keep trying.
Wow, what an inspirational story, not only for listeners, but I'm sitting here thinking how that one phrase you said is so true. We cannot compare our behind the scenes with other people's highlight reels. And with media, really, it's not just the internet, it's television, it's our smartphones, it's any way that we can consume content. It is so easy to fall into that mindset of, oh, look how great they have it. Look how it's so easy for them. But we didn't see, you mentioned Mark Cuban earlier. I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank because I believe of all the shows about business, even though it's edited down, I mean, we know we don't see everything, but it really does hone in on the elements of how you take your business concept to the next level, and different levels of entrepreneurs show up on that show. You have the guy that just invented something who's looking to really get it out there. And then you have people who've been having success with sales for a while and are just wanting to go to that next level and looking for a partnership that someone like Lori or Robert or Mark could bring. But on the downside of that is sometimes I know I've heard people talk about this, that they look at someone like Mark Cuban. Well, we didn't see Mark in the days when he was struggling.
That's right.
We didn't see when he was living off of ramen. And he was,
That's right.
He really was. And if I can find that Simon Cowell clip, I think that would be a valuable piece to share on your page as well, because it encapsulates, here's a man who has become he may even be a billionaire for all I know, but the guy has done enormously well, but it wasn't always like that.
Yeah, I do think it's really important. A good friend of mine who's an author, Alex Benayan, actually came up originally with that concept of the behind the scenes versus the highlight reel. And it really changed my life when I heard that concept, because I thought, oh, I'm totally doing that.
Yep.
And it's just silly and unnecessary. And then when you dive deeper with any of these entrepreneurs and you hear their background stories, you're like, oh, okay, it's not that different. It's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Well, really quickly, as we're still in this section, one of the things that everybody can agree on now is that the world has changed very quickly in the last few years. And what, from your vantage point as an entrepreneur and business owner, Andrea, what specific shifts or changes have challenged or inspired you? Just briefly mention some of those.
Really, it's just the prevalence of technology. It's mind-blowing to me how quickly that you can test a concept to see if it will work. So really the concept, Eric Ries's made popular of the lean startup and just like really throwing something in to test your concept quickly for almost $0. So for example, with lessons.biz, I put $147 into that company and created a website and created a little bit of a curriculum. And I made $2,500 in sales off of my $147. And I thought, oh, I must be onto something. If I had put that same $147 in and got $0 in sales, I would probably say, wow, there's more work to do here. And that didn't used to be the case. I mean, you used to have to build out a whole entire company pretty much to see if something would work or not. And you really, really do not need to do that now.
No, you don't. You don't. Those who think that you do need to either get in touch with you or read more books, because they're really the roadblocks they're gone. The barriers are gone. The barriers now are in our minds. So people who sit on the sidelines and watch everybody else and don't take it takes a little bit of guts to suit up, even if you feel like you're not ready, or you look around and you say, wow, these guys have been playing so much longer than I have. They're so seasoned. Well, we need rookies, we do. We need that next generation. And I know that's one of the things that you're very passionate about is how can you pass down the lessons that you've learned as a businesswoman over the last 15, 20 years of your life where you've done very well, but you've also known what failure feels like. You're such a rich resource of experience that people can learn from. And listeners, you're going to get links to Andrea's different ventures, including her latest one, which just sounds fantastic. And again, that'll be at playyourpositionpodcast.com/Andrea. And Andrea, as we wind down our game, one of the most exciting parts of any football game is when your team scores a touchdown, especially the game-winning touchdown. So let's take the ball into the end zone and score that touchdown. But before we do that, you are in the red zone and there are less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You are down by 4 points. It's third down, and it is now or never for you and your team. Tell us a story about a time when you overcame this obstacle and ran the ball into the end zone for a touchdown that won the game for you.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's such a good question. I have the perfect one. So my very first clothing company was Anti-Establishment Clothing. And it may be shocking to your listeners, but those were really offensive t-shirts. And so we got our first big account, which was Hot Topic, which was a very, very big deal for us. Because if the shirt sold through, we immediately would have done like $50,000 in sales, which was a very lot of money to me back then. But unfortunately, we had Blink-182 wearing our shirts and System of a Down and all these bands that were hugely popular back then, but they just didn't sell through in the stores. And I was devastated. I thought there is no tomorrow. I've created this whole company. It's done so well. I can't believe that it's not going to go into larger retailers, that it's not going to sell. So I'm on the telephone with my buyer who's insisting that they can't buy anything else from me. And they've already bought like 3 times as much as they should have, seen my sell-through numbers were so low. And I do what any like 25-year-old would do, or 24, however old I was then. I literally just started crying on the phone, and I was trying to pretend like I wasn't crying, but it was impossible to hide. It was like the ugly cry. And so I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. And this poor buyer, he's like a 21-year-old guy. He doesn't know what to do with this, pretty girl is crying on the phone. And he goes, Andrea, it's okay. Just bring us stuff that's going to sell. And I go, and I'm still crying. I go, okay, well, I started this new company, Delinquent Distribution, and I'm going to send you, 80 new designs in the next 6 weeks, which is crazy. That's crazy. Like 99 designs did not exist back then. Mm-hmm. I didn't have easy access to graphic designers. There's a lot of t-shirt designs. But I did. I just made it happen. I immediately, the second I got off the phone, I called my biggest competitor and said, I want to license your designs. And I'll give you 50% of the profit, which is insane. Like that's like very, very high. Yes. But he said yes. And so then I immediately, like within the next 2 hours, called every single one of my competitors after I had gotten the first one to say yes and said, I'll give you 25% of the profit. I will take care of all of the expense. I'll take care of every single thing. And that's how I started my distribution company. It took me 3 months to get those designs together. Then I presented them to the chain store. And in that following 3 months, so within 6 months, I had made $1 million in profit.
Wow.
From that devastating experience. And I literally thought, I'm going to have to go get a corporate job. My company is over.
And folks, that right there is the touchdown that won the Super Bowl for Andrea.
It really is.
Hall of Fame moment there, folks. That is fantastic. I love that for so many reasons. I think most of all because you did not give up. You could have crumbled in your pile of tears and just said, I'm done. I'm going to take the easy route. And I don't know if I don't think there's an entrepreneur on the planet who has not entertained that idea, that there's just that moment of insanity when we think, I'm going to go get a job because I can't. That's the terror barrier, isn't it? We come up against the terror barrier and think, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. But no, something deep within us, which happened to you that day, and you reached out to your competitor, and look what happened.
That is what ended up getting me the sales rights on Minecraft and World of Warcraft and Call of Duty and Walking Dead and all these huge, massive brands. Every video game you can think of, League of Legends, Dota, all of them. It was because of that series of phone calls. That was one of the companies that I called and signed over their rights to me.
Wow. Again, persistence and just plain old hard work and not caring, not just saying, I have no other options. One of the people I've worked with in the past talks about you cannot have a plan B, because when you have a plan B, it gives you an out. That's the problem, is people think, oh, I have a plan B. So they then don't just go, excuse my language, but balls to the wall. I'm going to just play full out. And you did that. And what, again, it's that Hall of Fame moment where you never looked back after that. Things just started to happen. So as we end up the show, Andrea, I always ask my guests to share 1 to 3 key offensive strategies straight out of your playbook that listeners could implement right now to move the chains of their either careers or entrepreneurial ventures forward. What would you suggest?
Well, first of all, get a mentor. Just straight up immediately. Get a mentor, the person that you is a couple rungs up that you want to be at. The second would be put a dollar figure on your time. This was absolutely instrumental to me, especially as an entrepreneur. My mentor instructed me to do this. And I said, well, my time is worth $20 an hour, which was a whopping figure to me at the time. But that meant I wasn't going to be packing boxes anymore, because I was doing a lot of stuff within my companies myself to air quote save money. And that year I took my company from 250,000 in sales to over $1 million in sales, because I was spending all of that time that I would have been, doing some type of very lower level admin task that I could hire out back then for $8 an hour. And I made sales calls instead. So that is huge to accelerate the growth of your business. You don't need to be doing everything. And then also, the third one can help you in the corporate world, or it can help you in an entrepreneurial world, which is learn to delegate. You can do anything. I could do probably most things in most of my companies more efficiently and better than many people that would work for me, because I know exactly how I want it done. But that doesn't mean that I'm the one that should be doing it. So just let it go. Let your employees rise to the occasion. Those are my best ones.
Yes, delegate. And women, I'm talking to you right now. That is one of the things that we struggle with. I don't know why, but it's true. We just want to take on everything because we believe, oh, well, if I don't get it done, no one's going to get it done, or we want it done fast. There's all kinds of things, but heed Andrea's advice. Heed her advice. You're actually going to free up more time by letting other people do what you should not be doing in your life, whether you're building a business or you're even working a full-time job and you have a family or you have other interests. It's just going to make your life better. So thank you for sharing those. Those are fabulous. And finally, Andrea, what is the best way for people to connect with you, either online or offline? Where are you hanging out these days?
Well, right now I'm hanging out in Sedona, Arizona, but I'm going to be moving over to Boulder, which I am in love with. And the best way is actually through my new company. We're teaching really detailed, specific courses to entrepreneurs. The first one is exactly how to start a t-shirt company. It's myself and my business partner, Dan Caldwell, who is the founder of Tap Out Clothing, which obviously is a massive brand that a lot of your listeners have probably heard of. And that you actually get a ton of personal interaction with both of us. And so that's probably the very best way right now.
That's awesome. And that website would be?
Lessons.biz.
Lessons.biz. So you will find that link along with the books that Andrea recommended, her story, some highlights from our conversation. And Andrea, Play Your Position podcast listeners around the world, thank you for taking your time. You are a busy woman with a lot going on. You are an inspiration to me, and I know are an inspiration to many, many others. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with the Play Your Position team.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for everything that you do for encouraging entrepreneurship and for helping people to achieve their dreams. I just think it's fantastic.
Hey team, wow, wasn't that a great conversation? I love the variety of stories my guests share with you each week. Do you think your story is a good fit for the Play Your Position podcast? I currently have a few slots available to book guests who fit the show's theme of showing up, playing your best game at whatever you do, and being true to your spirit in work and life. If this sounds like you or someone you know, there's a nomination form over on playyourpositionpodcast.com just to the right of the latest post. Click and follow the instructions on the page, and who knows, you may be suiting up for game day with me really soon. See you there.
Thanks for listening to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count at MaryLouKaiser.com.